Cecil does think there's always been a better way to do something. Most of the time, he's been right.
Well, buying low and selling high is the name of the game, and Cecil does a fairly good job of that.
I think about way back when I was young and I didn't have much of nothing.
He's still the first one at work, the last one to leave.
I made a choice right there and then to turn that nothing into something, right?
His work ethic is unmatched to anybody out there.
Name's Cecil Obrate. I really don't know what I do, but keep track of a lot of businesses going on.
But those business folks are gonna know how I became the man I am. I was born, bred and made in the USA. And I hope, love, and pray for my country.
Titans of Business, the Cecil Obrate story.
Taking the mound for tonight's ceremonial first pitch, the man who made it happen, Mr. Cecil O'Brate.
Who is Cecil Obrate? Born in Enid, Oklahoma during the Depression, things were not easy. The rural areas of the Midwest were especially hard hit.
Cecil grew up in this very same environment of difficult times and the hard winds, lack of rain, poor crops. Particularly in the panhandle of Oklahoma did people have to be tough. Boise City was almost the epicenter of the Dust Bowl back in the 30s.
Yeah, I think of Enid, Oklahoma a lot like the city I grew up in called El Dorado, that there was a little bit of oil, but a lot of agriculture. A very simple life, but still a community where people cared about each other.
Oh, it was a pretty small town, but it was, it's big to me at that time because I hadn't been anywhere else.
What my grandparents talked a lot about was this $1 a day. If you could find a job, $1 a day was a big job. They talked about the soup lines and truly, truly tough times out there.
Everybody was poor, so you didn't have a rich neighbor living beside you or anything like that. We all were poor.
He got his work ethics from his father and grandfather. They were farming out there, and it was tough out there.
Mostly my mother had a big garden, and we had chickens and cows, and so it kept us eating.
My father-in-law, who was a stockman and raised cattle in the Flint Hills back in central Kansas, once told me that the 30s were so bad that he could barely hang on.
Going to bed hungry was kind of common during the Depression.
The men had to work or tried to work raising crops and had to have a certain amount of nourishment, and so did the children, obviously. I think it was particularly difficult on the women who my mother once told me often did without so that the children and the husband could have more to eat. The Dust Bowl in the 30s in Kansas and in the Oklahoma Panhandle was caused by plowing of native grass pastures. Buffalo grass, blue grama, those pastures don't erode in the wind. When those pastures were plowed and crops were planted, that exposed the dirt to the wind and to the rain, which there was none, and the dried dirt started to move, and it was awful. The dust clouds I've seen pictures of are just amazing. They make the worst thunderstorm I've ever seen seem like it was nothing, the blackness of it all.
You would dust your house, and just a half an hour later, there's another film of a quarter-inch of dust across everything, that no matter how tight you made the windows, you couldn't keep the dust out of the house. And what my grandparents would talk to me is they would try to pack like towels around the windows to catch the dust.
We got there kind of the last of the really dirty season. I remember one just really rolling in, a big dirt storm.
The wind just howled, and it was so dry nothing grew, so it blew the topsoil over the fence rows and up in the air. And it wasn't until the dust finally reached Washington, D.C. that they decided they better do something about the dust out here.
Things became so difficult that only the toughest could hang on, and particularly here in western Kansas where Cecil grew up. The people he would have grown up with would have had the same kind of work ethic of having to make do with less, having to work longer hours for less pay and less reward. That work ethic is something that people in this area and in this era grew up with.
As a kid, Cecil had a life that was about as difficult as anybody else's. He didn't have a lot of money involved in his life, but impressive worker. He certainly likes to work.
I did not like being poor, and it was poor enough that I had managed to save up to $20. I had a $20 bill, and I had it in my dresser drawer, and my mother saw it. I hadn't told anybody I had it. And Dad came to me one day and he says, I could sure borrow you that $20 till payday because we're just out.
Your mother tells me that you have $20?
Yes, sir.
Did you work hard for that money, son?
Every day after school, Pop.
Why, an 8-year-old with $20, that's a lot of money.
I like working. I don't like not having money.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to borrow that money. Just until payday, okay?
Okay.
Things were that tough in the Depression. And when I got a little older, I decided that I was going to do something about it.
I think Cecil learned to be a hard worker when he was young. He's made eyeglasses, he's flipped bikes, he's sold cars, he's pumped gas, he's built combines.
He has sold garage door openers, I believe. He moved grain bins.
I worked in this meat market, and then they'd give me 30 minutes off for lunch, or an hour off for lunch, and I'd go to the cafe and wash dishes for an hour for a meal.
When we came to Syracuse, he started working at an old filling station. People would bring their cars in, not working, so he'd just buy the car, and then while he was working at the filling station, he'd get them to run and sell them to somebody else.
I found 2 jobs, and one of them was packaging ice cream as it come out of the pipe, whatever it was. And I was, short on money, so I thought, well, I'll eat enough to won't have to buy supper. I went to my second job then, which was setting pins in a bowling alley. Back then, before they had automatic pin setters, they had somebody back there setting pins.
If there's a way to make a buck, Cecil's doing it.
The Cecil magic is an interesting thing. Cecil does work harder than anybody else I know. I think work for him is work as well as his hobby, his passion.
He's done everything. He was always on the move. It's just always been his way in his life. Not many people are that way, but he's an entrepreneur, and I think he has been since he was 6 years old.
I started my entrepreneurship when I was 5, 6 years old, playing marbles. You draw a circle in the ground, and put your marbles in there, and try to knock the other guys out. And I always would trade. Somebody want my marbles, I'd trade. I'd take 2 of theirs and give them 1 of mine. And that's kind of what got me started.
I like the green marble. I'll give you the green marble if you let me have those 2 blue marbles.
Back when he was 5 years old, I bet he was thinking about how he could make 1 marble turn into 2 or 2 turn into 4. I bet he was a wheeler dealer even back then.
I guess that's kind of where he got started with maybe business, if you want to call it.
He was always going to be aggressive and want to be at the top of whatever he was doing, be it playing marbles or building tanks. All through his life, I've just known him as being an aggressive and bright person.
Well, when I met Francis, I understood the secret of Cecil's success. And I think whenever I meet a person that's really successful, I always try to figure out what's their special thing that they've done. And I think maybe Cecil's, it probably was his hard work ethic. But when I met Francis, I knew, here's the real strength behind the man.
I walked into class late. I was custom cutting wheat in North Dakota. And I was about 2 weeks late. And so I had to come into the class with the class already going.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Mr. Baldwin.
Mr. Obrate, you're late. 2 weeks late.
Sorry, Mr. Baldwin. I was cutting wheat with my granddad.
You've got some serious catching up to do.
She saw me and says, well, might be a chance, you know.
So that's what they tell me, that I took hold and never turned loose.
One of my favorite stories Cecil and Frances tell is about the time that they first met. And Cecil took 3 girls home with him that night after dinner. Just so happened that Frances was the last one dropped off.
He had one little funny-looking pickup that was a disaster, but it ran. And we went around and left one off here, you know, one over there. And pretty soon it was just the 2 of us.
They got married real young. They're probably just out of high school. They're both about the same age.
He called me Saturday morning. We were supposed to go to Syracuse to be married.
I was in Oklahoma and she was in Hutchinson. I had a real nice car and I sold it the day before I was supposed to go pick her up. And I thought I could get another one right quick. Well, I couldn't, so I had a guy fly me up to Hutchinson where she was at. And I figured on giving him a check, and he didn't want a check, he wanted cash. So I give him all my cash, and then when we went to get the marriage license, I didn't have any money and they wouldn't take a check.
I started asking him about the marriage license. You know, he was looking here and couldn't find it. He'd lost it.
We got that picked up and she put it in her purse or somewhere a little better, safer in my pocket. She says, you're trying every way you can to get out of this.
And I thought later, you know, I should have known better. He couldn't come and get me. He lost a marriage license. I think he was just trying to get rid of me.
When I was second year of college, the guy that was farming the ground east of town retired, and the guy that owned the ground offered it to us to farm.
We had the opportunity to farm 3,000 acres.
You're 2 years away from becoming an engineer.
We have the ability to make a lot of money farming.
I didn't marry a farmer.
This is our chance to make some real money. 3,000 acres.
You've worked so hard at school.
I think that this is the start of something big for us.
If you leave now, you won't come back. This is your only chance to leave your mark at the university.
She says, I married an engineer, not a farmer. I don't like the farm.
I really want him to finish college because I couldn't. And I guess, talked as slow as I could. It did do good. So anyway, he got 2 years. That's still a lot of.
We got a 30-day lease from the guy, and says if you do good, you can keep it. We've had it now for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. Still farming, my son's farming it. And my attorney here in town says, I can't believe it. I've never seen a 30-day lease on a farm.
Many times farmers take odd jobs throughout the winter, and Cecil's no exception. And in fact, he was even a teacher one time.
It was right after the war, and they couldn't find teachers. And they had an older lady, and the kids just drove her batty. So she just says, Christmas, she says, I quit. And they couldn't find a teacher. They come ask me, and I says, okay, just this one semester, then you better have somebody.
Quiet down, everyone. I'm your new teacher, Mr. Obrate.
He's not a teacher. He's a farmer.
Where's Mrs. Jones?
She left. Got tired of you all acting up. Now that I have your attention, I'm here, and you better behave.
Yes, Mr. Obrate.
That's better.
Got along fine with the kids. As soon as they found out that I wasn't going to put up with any crap, they was good kids.
Coming up, neither one had much of anything when we got married, and just kind of went from there.
As a successful farmer, I bought about 3,000 acres of ground.
They still have a lot of farm. I want to save 10,000, maybe 20,000 acres. That's what ended up getting him where he's at.
Cecil has his hand in so many different businesses and industries, whether it be oil and gas, ethanol, hotels, restaurants, food science, housing, entertainment, you name it, and Cecil's probably done it. However, farming provided the capital for Cecil to invest in other businesses like Palmer Tank and Manufacturing.
I bought Palmer Tank in 1966. I paid just north of 100,000, somewhere like 120 or 30,000. A guy named Guy Palmer was running as his business.
Guy Palmer sold his welding shop.
Well, why did he do that?
Well, his wife wanted him to sell and retire.
Well, what fool would buy it?
A fool that doesn't even know how to weld. I am that fool that bought Guy Palmer's place. Give me just a bit. We'll see who's laughing.
When I bought Palmer's, it had 2 welders out there building tanks one at a time in one little building, half this size. We added some more space, and I kind of did a assembly line type building. One guy didn't do everything. One guy did one thing and it moved on down the line. So I cut my costs way down by doing that. But we had 200 employees, I think. So from 2 to 200, we made it grow.
It was a big company at that point. It was pretty much state-of-the-art welding facilities, and he'd gotten into fiberglass in a continuous wind, so they were totally round and there were no stress points. That was quite a change for the fiberglass business.
There's a lot of competition in town, out of town, clear across the United States, but there's not many of them that are diversified where they will build fiberglass tanks, steel tanks, stainless steel tanks. You know, our philosophy is this: if it's round and holds liquid, we'll build it for you.
At Palmer's, we were in the fiberglass business. And there was a company in El Reno, Oklahoma, that went broke in the fiberglass business. So I went down there to buy the equipment out of the company. And then I made them an offer, and I'd just buy the corporation. And on the way to the airport, on a scrap of paper, we made the deal. We got pretty near to the airport, and the guy that was buying it from says, "I think I sold that to you too cheap." And I says, "Good, because I thought it's too high. That gives me an option to back out." "Oh, no, it's still a deal."
Cecil sold Palmer Tank at about the height of the oil business, when the price of West Texas crude was about as high as it's ever been.
There was a group, and I don't remember where they were from, but they come in and tried to buy it, and I didn't really have it listed for sale or anything. And it was a ridiculous offer.
The next contract that came in was well done. The people put some money up front. They had experience in previous tank companies. They knew what they were doing, and they seemed very knowledgeable, and I thought it was a good contract.
And when they looked at my financials, they said, "You're cooking the books on us." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're fixing the books so that it'll look a lot better than it is to sell." I said, "Hey, I haven't touched the books. What you see is what you get."
In 2013, Cecil Obrate sold Palmer Tank Manufacturing for $113 million.
Cecil O'Brate sold his Palmer Tank Company for $113 million, big one.
Hey guys, did you hear that?
$113 million?
Now that's a lot of money.
Well, I knew old Cecil was doing well, but I didn't know he's doing $113 million well.
Well, I even heard that he only paid $100,000 for the whole company.
Man, you know they employ over 200 people now.
And that's just one of his businesses.
Mm-hmm. Back in probably 2010, 11, and 12, I was just kind of getting tired of the tank business because I've been doing this for 40-some years, and we decided to sell it and go do something else for a while. I was fine with that. Gone, done. They took over, and I stayed one more year and helped with the transition.
When Cecil sold to the big company in Ohio, it became a lot more people involved. It changed from me having one boss to maybe 20 bosses.
We had about 250 employees. We were making about 20 tanks a day, and they abruptly wanted to double that, so they put on a night shift, which I tried to explain to them a night shift in this business doesn't work. So they went abruptly from adding another 50 people and dropping it to 10 tanks a day.
During their tenure, a combination of a lot of bad and adverse things occurred. The markets came apart, their costing added to overhead. Employees were somewhat disgruntled and leaving. It added to the decline that the business could not go on as it was.
They had a new manager in every year and never could make a profit. So one day, they just called Steve and says, "We want to sell it back to you."
They said, we can't do this anymore. You guys want to buy it back, or we're probably going to close it? And we said, well, maybe if the price is right.
They said, tank manufacturing is not us. So they approached us about June 1st of 2018. We purchased Palmer Tank and Manufacturing back for $21 million.
Bought it back for the whole thing, plus a plant in North Dakota. Pretty good deal for them to buy it back for that cheap.
The fact that Cecil purchased the business back was a total surprise to me. I can assure you it was a mighty good feeling.
We ended up probably hiring 20 to 30 of our old employees back. Went from probably making, 3 to 4 tanks a day back up to about 35 tanks a day, and a plant in Dickinson, North Dakota came along with it. So we were rocking and rolling.
When I heard that Cecil was buying it back, I was really excited because of his contacts and his ability to change directions. I knew we would be back making money again.
At the height of Cecil's banking days, he owned 4 different banks.
He was successful in the banking business, made some money, made a lot of friends, picked up some clients, associated with some good people that he used in the different banks that he owned. And I think overall, I would have to say he benefited from it.
Cecil ran this daily like a business. He knew how to make money, how to make good loans, and he knew, more importantly, he knew the people that he's making these loans for. All the bank examiners and auditors saw what was on the 4 corners of that piece of paper. Cecil was able to see more and understand the person.
He tried to run the banking business much like he did his business, and I think the regulators, from a standpoint, said, you're not supposed to be doing it that way. This is what you need to be doing it as.
One of Cecil's greatest attributes is thinking outside the box. And in the banking world, you kind of got to go from box 1 to box 2 to make sure box 3 fits.
I think he just simply was not accustomed to businesses that are so much driven by government regulation.
The regulations and things like that were getting crazy, and he never had any problem, but he actually had a pretty good price presented to him that he decided it's the best thing to get out and go on to do something else that he liked better. He thought he'd like the banking business, but he didn't really like it.
I was reading the Fortune 500 magazine when they put all the richest people in there, and I noticed that a big percent of them were in the oil business. And I thought, well, hell, if it's good enough for them, it's going to be good enough for me, so I'm going to get in there too.
Cecil's best business decisions were obviously the oil and gas industry and drilling 2 wells a week.
American Warrior, oil and gas exploration company, one of the largest independent oil and gas exploration companies in Kansas. One of the things Cecil's prided himself is being one of the top drillers in Kansas every year.
The money to get into this oil business came from the manufacturing company and from the sale of the banks. And that's what he used to get started.
I knew nothing about the oil business, but if you're like I am, you learn pretty fast. That's why I bought a 3D seismic company, because it helps you pinpoint where there's oil.
Cecil embraces technology. He spent a lot of time in his efforts educating himself on how seismic works, understanding the different zones. And one of the reasons that he's been extremely successful is his ability to understand contours, understand the maps.
I just look at the whole deal and analyze it and make sure that there's oil in the area and then drill it.
He's able to put fields together. He's able to analyze different areas that maybe some people overlook.
You know, it looks like it'd be really easy. You just go anywhere in Kansas and drill an oil well, but there's a real art and a science to it. So Cecil's always adapted with the science, but I think it's the artistic part of this. I don't know if Cecil can smell oil or how he's been successful always.
I think Cecil has a tendency to be able to find oil when nobody else can. I think he can smell it.
I don't think I have any tricks. I'm just probably more thorough than most before I drill, and must have a little bit of feeling for it too, I don't know. But we don't get very many dry holes.
Cecil spent years in farming and oil and gas, so ethanol was a natural progression.
When I heard Cecil was getting into ethanol, I really wasn't surprised because ethanol was new, just like the cattle market was new, just like Palmer's was new. It was just another venture for Cecil.
I'd been thinking about the ethanol business because it was just in its infancy. The guys from Liberal were trying to put money together, guys I knew, to build an ethanol plant. So they came seeing me in.
And they decided they wanted to build 3 plants. And they wanted to put one in Dodge City, one in Garden City, and one in Liberal. They put out a prospectus and had all kinds of people that wanted to get into it, and that's how it started.
I was their first investor. I think I invested $5 million.
Cecil has had a track record of being a very successful businessman. And with that, when you have somebody that has that reputation, they want to get in on it. And so his coattails helped pull in a lot of investors. They got the equity that they needed, over $100 million, fairly easy.
They got it built. Cost a lot more than they thought it was going to get it built. They had gotten a loan from some high interest rate, like 12% interest. We couldn't make that work.
Cecil was able to help get it lowered to 7%, but that was still too high. So to fix it, Cecil had to get creative.
Farm Credit would not take a loan from a bank. They just didn't steal banks' loans. So they says, if you own it 100% for one day, we'll take it from you. I start calling all my friends, all my banker friends, everybody else, to borrow money for one day and raise the $65 million. And then the banker that I had put the money in, I called him and says, here's wiring instructions where to wire the money. He says, that's way over my limit. I can't wire that much money. So he sent it to Kansas City, and Kansas City's over my limit. So they sent it to St. Louis, where the home office was, and they wired the $65 million by getting it to Farm Credit, lowered that interest rate from, I don't remember, 7% or whatever it was, down to like 3.5%. And in the meantime, after they got it built, losing money, there's a lot of people wanting to sell out.
In 2008, the ethanol industry headed south. Margins were lousy, plants were going broke. They just said, I want out. Well, obviously, we were able to buy them at a discount, and when I would have some come for sale, the company really wasn't in a position to buy them, so I would call Cecil, and Cecil would say, sure. And he just continued to buy and buy and buy.
So I just started buying shares as they came available at reduced prices, and we got it going good, and it started making money.
Cecil's philosophy has always been is, teach a person to fish, don't give them fish. So if you're willing to work hard, he would find a place for you in his organization.
One of Cecil's business principles is get good people, get ones that'll work hard, but get them some skin in the game so that they can win or lose depending on how well they work. It's not just drawing a wage. He's very successful at that, and that business model has served him well over the years.
I'll find a guy that I really think is going to be a good manager, and I'll jet him to Vegas for a weekend, and let him see the good life.
When anyone in the company had a better idea or a good idea, Cecil was always there to listen and to follow through and try it. If it didn't work, that was fine, but if it did work, it made more money.
Traits of a Cecil employee, in my opinion, have been the kind of employee who does not mind approaching Cecil and saying, I think I found a better way to do something. Here's a different idea. What do you think about this? And his door was open, and he did listen to that, and he adopted a lot of ideas that the employees came up with.
He's got a couple long-term employees here at Palmer's. One of them, being Gerald Belknap, has been here since he bought it in '66. Gerald is still working for us.
I get there early and get the coffee made, and we've always had coffee.
So you're my new boss?
I guess so. I just bought the company from Guy Palmer.
You a welder?
No, but you are.
Sure am.
Still in school?
Almost done.
What are you gonna do after?
Hadn't quite thought about that yet.
Well, you can work here a little while, just until you get it figured out.
How long you been working here, Gerald?
Longer than you, 57 years.
That's quite a while. Have you thought about retiring yet?
Haven't even thought about it.
You can work here a little longer, just until you figure out what you want to do.
That works for me. Yeah. I was one of 2 welders when Cecil bought the place. I was a welder at high school, and my high school teacher decided I would be a good candidate to go to Palmer Manufacturing to start working there.
He really cares for his employees. Their family, too. He's got a lot of long-term employees with him that have been with him for a lot of years.
I'm down to where I get invited to the Thanksgiving dinners, so that's about as family as you're going to get in a job.
I was well acquainted with all of his boys, and it was like I was part of a family.
He takes care of his family pretty good. and he opens up opportunities for his family.
He really enjoys getting the families all together and seeing the kids, grandkids, and now the great-grandkids.
Cecil, even, I guess he's over 90 now, he's still the first one at work, the last one to leave. And in between that, he's being a great-grandfather, grandfather, a husband.
He does work harder than almost anybody else, and I think that's the reason for a lot of his success is dedication and effort and tireless working to understand something.
Three biggest traits that Cecil, for his success, was number one, hard work, number two, lots of study, and number three, just was able to get it done.
He's hired and retained good people. He's been a good judge of people in my estimation, and the people he's put in those businesses have dedicated themselves to making it work.
I think Cecil, hires the right people. There's no question about that.
Cecil's a very good boss. As long as you give him a day's work, he'll give you a day's pay.
I expect them to do their job, give them the reins and get it done. Make it happen.
Our work ethic here is you're going to stay until you get the work done. If you're a 9-to-5 guy, you probably don't fit in our organization.
Cecil's very old school, and it's good. He's the handshake, look you in the eye kind of guy.
I'll tell you about a story that he and another individual came into my office, and the individual, they were starting a partnership, and the individual says, well, I'd like to have this many dollars and pay this much interest. Can you get that? And Cecil kind of looked at him and looked at me and says, if you wouldn't say anything right now, the banker would probably do a better deal than what you're wanting to do. And I says, well, I kind of like his deal, Cecil. But we went ahead and put it together, and it was probably a better deal than what the individual was wanting to start out with.
To a business guy starting out, he needs to find something that he likes, plus makes money, get the bank or his investors to buy in, and then work 24 hours a day until you get the thing going.
Cecil did not run everything by me. In fact, I've come to think in latter years he was rather selective in what it is that he sent to me. When he'd already pretty much made up his mind about a deal and didn't want to hear whether it was good or bad because he'd already decided to do the deal, I think those he didn't send to me.
He was interested in doing lots of other things besides what he was doing. And he would look at several things, and he got into several things. And some of them, I didn't actually know about until after he'd done it.
Cecil did step in on some businesses that were kind of underwater, and I remember one deal in particular for a company that was behind in payments and couldn't pay. The president of the company was going through his assets and what was mortgaged, and then at the last of the conversation he said, wait a minute, I have a fishing boat. I'll never forget Cecil's comment, and that was, I've already got a boat, what else you got?
The only thing that I'll confess to that didn't work is a 24-alley bowling alley.
The bowling alley deal was brought in to me to look at after it was underwater, and I wondered why did he ever get involved in that.
There was a little bowling alley in town, and I went and talked to them and made a deal to buy it from them so I could close it down and move all the people over to new bowling alley. And I took it back to the board, and they says, oh, no, he's trying to rip us. We're not going to pay that. This would have been an instant success with the bowling alley. So most of us sold our shares and got out of it. I set pins in a bowling alley in college, about 110 degrees in the back. I should have learned not to buy a bowling alley. Matter of fact, there's no more anything unless I own 100%, because I want to do things one way and a group wants to do them another way.
Some people ask when Cecil's going to retire, but according to Cecil, he is retired.
When it comes to retirement, I'm sure that I'll probably be the first to retire, even though I'm a little younger than he is. That's going to be a little hard on my ego.
I'm going to retire right after Cecil does, which in my books means I'm not ever going to retire.
Will Cecil ever retire? I don't see that happening. He loves going to work. He still loves interacting with other folks. As near as I can tell, his heart's in great shape, and he has a big, big heart at that. So no, Cecil's not retiring soon.
I don't see that Cecil will retire unless he absolutely has to.
You know, my mother thinks that Cecil should have retired years ago.
2 words, retire and patience. He doesn't know what either one of them is.
My wife keeps hollering at me, when are you going to retire? And I says, well, tell me what retirement is. She says, well, retirement's when you can go do anything you want to do. I says, well, guess what, honey, I'm doing that right now.
If you had observed Cecil and Frances with their children and grandchildren, you consider them lucky people, but you'd never think that they're wealthy.
I have never seen Cecil dress like a banker, a business owner, a tycoon. He's always dressed just like me.
One of the things that always has impressed me about Cecil is that he is that millionaire, billionaire next door. He lives very humbly. He wears the same 1 or 2 colors of shirts, same blue-gray trousers, same shoes.
Cecil's house is nice, but it's certainly not extravagant. He's lived in it for a number of years now, and it's a nice house, but it's not anything incredibly out of the ordinary.
My folks lived in the same house since 1974, so they haven't moved around a lot. Just from the farm to town, that was it.
His cars are nice cars, but they're American-made Ford Chevrolets. There are no Lamborghinis, Porsches, or Ferraris.
I like my 2016 Tahoe. I'm not out to impress anybody. I just want something to get me back and forth to work.
Cecil owns a building that the local gym rents. Every day, about 5:30, Cecil goes to the gym in his same clothes he works in, button down and slacks. One day, he's in the gym, and this lady went to the director and said, I feel bad for that poor old man. He can't afford workout clothes. And the lady goes,
Ma'am, that poor old man owns this building.
Cecil don't live high in a hog. He's actually pretty tight.
Will Rogers once said, the best way to double your money is to fold it in half and put it back in your pocket and don't spend it.
Cecil Obrate may look like an average Joe and live very frugal, but he does like his airplane and flying private.
The one splurge that he's ever done is the airplanes. We started out, probably in 1988, I bought a little Cherokee 180 and flew him around in that a little bit. And then he decided that we'd move up a little, and then we've just kept moving up a little and a little and a little.
Cecil does splurge on the airplanes, and they're nice airplanes. They're fun to ride in, and they get you there quick.
The latest plane, like Cecil says, is pretty nice. It's a Cessna Sovereign. It goes 500 miles per hour. As Cecil's gotten older, he wants to travel faster, and the Cessna Sovereign does the trick.
I don't even remember where we're flying to, and he looked over at me and he says, Tom, don't say anything about this plane. He says, my wife doesn't know that I own it. She thinks I rent it. So just kind of keep that between you and I on the plane. And I was not the only one that had that conversation with him.
We were with some of their folks, and I'd said something about the plane, and one of the ladies said, well, don't worry about it, you own it. I says, you what?
She says, do we own this plane? I said, yeah. That was the first she knew that we owned it, because I didn't know how she would take spending money on an airplane. And after that, she approved. She didn't approve that I didn't tell her, but she approved of the airplane.
My mom does like to travel. It allows them to travel, and now she's pretty addicted to flying.
George W. Bush and I become friends. He needed a ride from Dallas to Kansas City to a big fundraiser. So the guys at the fundraiser called me and asked me if I would haul him up there. So he brought 2 of his Secret Service with him, and his wife and him. So we flew him up there to that and kind of got acquainted with him and took him back to Dallas. And this was quite a little later. He was talking to one of his friends and says, what am I going to do now I'm out of office? I got to have something to do. And he says, well, why don't you paint? He says, I don't know how to paint. So he thought it was a good idea, so he hired a person to come teach him how to paint. And then he painted this scene of trees down at his ranch. And I opened a mail from him one day and pulled it out, and there it was, all framed and ready to hang on the wall. Not everybody's got one of his pictures.
Cecil and Frances alone have put in over $100 million back in the Garden City community. In the last 10 years, Cecil's built an indoor water park, 3 hotels, 52 houses, 39 duplexes, ethanol plant, and it's thanks to his leadership and his investment that he's changed the trajectory of Garden City.
Cecil's businesses have, first of all, employed I don't know how many hundred people in Garden City and Finney County, so that's been a tremendous benefit to the community. He's also built a number of houses for people and rented them out and sold them at good rates.
What a lot of people don't realize is just the struggles of housing in these Midwest rural cities. And Cecil has used private funds to partnership with the governor to build so many housing projects.
We need the homes in Garden City today. He's built townhouses and duplexes, and I'm assuming every one of them are full today because of the industry going on in Garden City. Nobody else has wanted to do that, and Cecil had the initiative to go ahead and move forward with that and do it.
Cecil cares a lot about Garden City. All you have to do is look around. Cecil's got his fingerprints on almost everything in town.
There's entire blocks of retail that they put together. As far as I'm concerned, the best hotel is there in Garden City that Cecil owns, and some good restaurants as well. The big, huge water park that he's built for Garden City. He's made Garden City into an oasis.
He's also taken other interest in the community too by helping out other organizations. There's just a lot of different businesses that he's worked with and wanted them to succeed too.
I think that what Cecil believes is trying to help people to go from poverty into a job situation, to help people pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that education is a big part of that, education and hard work, that's the American dream, right? That anybody can still do that if they're willing to pay the price.
One of the great legacies of Cecil and Frances Obrate is the Obrate Foundation. That's a foundation that's been set up to help in need, at-risk kids, to give them the opportunity to get a college degree, get a GED, go to a trade school.
I am proud of our foundation. I'm very proud of what we do. What, 400 or 500 students that have scholarships.
Foundation was started because I was on the board of a company called Youthville that helped, that took kids in that the court had taken away from their parents. At 18, the state quits paying for those kids. And I saw a need there and decided to start helping these kids. Sounds like a bunch of kids from Youthville's turning 18.
Well, that's going to be a problem.
Why is that?
The state cuts off all funding for foster children when they turn 18.
Then what happens to them?
You know, some do okay, but to be honest with you, Cecil, many struggle on their own.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can't fix that.
The Obrate Foundation has done a number of things. One of them is when children have graduated from high school or graduated out of foster care, they need someone to take care of them, to step in at that point.
We are helping students who are aging out of the foster care system or have limited resources, and we're able to say, we're making this investment in you each year until you achieve your academic goal.
When we give the scholarships out, we require them to have a job. I want them to have skin in the game. I don't want to send somebody to college that doesn't really want to be there.
So for the Obrate Foundation, it is a little different than your average scholarship. It teaches you how to not only receive that money to help, but also manage that money, manage, getting a job. You have to have some kind of job, whether it's part-time or full-time, and also you get check-ins, you get to have a mentor, depending on what region you are, depends what mentor you have.
Our title, Program Advisor, is interchangeable with a lot of different things. Life coach, older sister, nagging aunt.
I don't know how many times I've gone to Mandy or Jerry and been like, hey, so I have to make this choice, and here are my choices, and I'm leaning towards this, but can I have some advice or what you would do? Or just situations like that where I needed kind of extra advice and another adult to kind of put their input in.
Cecil tries to set up a network around them, whether it's a tutor, whether it's life coaching. And by life coaching to Cecil, that means can you balance your checkbook, right? That you don't need credit cards, that you don't pile up debt, that you're a responsible person. So Cecil's trying to help those people who are literally trying to help themselves as well.
It's really important to the Obrate Foundation that we're helping the students to realize the value of money and be smart with that money.
Financial planning, to me, is one of the great things the foundation has done. I don't know of any other facility, public or private, that teaches financial management like the Obrate Foundation does.
Cecil's foundation is having a huge impact. You know, first of all, just one person at a time, those 150 students, many of those students have come back now to Garden City. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're technicians, all those types of things. All those kids are now coming back to that community to give back like Cecil has given.
Whatever their success is going to be is what he wants for them. And that's contagious. And so a lot of times we find our students handwrite him a thank you note that says, thank you for all that you've given for me. My goal in life is to be successful enough to do it for someone else.
It's very heartwarming to get letters from. I had one the other day that couldn't say enough appreciation for what we'd done. And we've had quite a few graduate already. And I think it's probably the best ways we can spend our money.
Cecil Obrate's philanthropic ventures go past the foundation. One of the things that he's taken great joy in was helping to build the baseball stadium at Oklahoma State University.
I went to Oklahoma State for 2 years, then came back and went to farming. I was the first one in any of the family that ever even thought about going to college.
Well, you know, he would have graduated with honors. Like a lot of people that time in the world, he had to go to work, make a living, and just never had time to go back. He was too busy. And he got his first degree, School of Hard Knocks, out there learning how to get things done and make something out of nothing, how to change yourself and in the process change the world.
I kind of lost contact with Oklahoma State for a while. And the athletic director heard about me, so he called and wanted to come see me.
Well, I was sitting in my office, and we had a ticket manager at that time. His name was Chris Ball. He said, there's a guy in Garden City that you need to get to know. He's named Cecil Obrate, and he went to Oklahoma State University. And as soon as Chris Ball left, I Googled up Cecil Obrate, and I'll be doggone, as my dad would say, there he was. And I was reading, I think it was on Conestoga Partners, and it had a biography or about him, and I read down at the bottom, it said, attended Oklahoma State University. So I thought, well, so I called him up. They had a phone number there on the website, and somehow I got through to him, and he asked who I was, and I told him. He said, well, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'd like to come meet you. Need to know about you. You need to get connected to Oklahoma State University. I saw that you went to school here, so.
I said, well, yeah, come on up. So he came up and reignited me with Oklahoma State.
When I first went to see him, he had a K-State license plate on the front of his car, big Wildcat. When I was leaving, I told him, my objective here is to get you to come back to Stillwater. You went to Oklahoma State University, you need to be proud of that, and you're gonna put a OSU Cowboy license plate up there.
I told him I wanted to do something for Oklahoma State. So he's the one that says, well, what we need is a new baseball stadium. I says, okay, we'll do that. So that's how the new baseball stadium got built.
Well, Obrate Stadium's unique in that it's got a 360-degree concourse. You can walk around. You have access to the whole stadium. We have a main entrance like most stadiums behind home plate, but we've got another main entrance in center field where most of the people will park. And then you can turn right or left, go to wherever your seat is, and have easy access to get there. The outfield seating's unique. It's almost like a berm without being a berm. And we anticipate people bringing in a lawn chair or blanket, throw it down, relaxing in the outfield. In this stadium, the only thing you see with a name on it is Obrate Stadium. I think that speaks to the significance of Cecil Obrate and his family and what they did to make this dream a reality.
I think when you see his make it happen phrase all around this facility, I think it tells you all you need to know. He worked for everything he had. He valued and appreciated everything he had. He learned to, at a very young age, work and work without expecting a great amount in return. And slowly but surely over his lifetime, when you read his book and you read about him and get to know him and hear the stories, everything he got involved with, he studied, he learned about it, and he became the very best at it.
One of the honors that they have at the stadium, they were going to let him throw the first pitch out. And he was kind of scared that he wouldn't be able to get the pitch to the catcher.
Yeah, I never played baseball, and I was always busy working. Couldn't even hardly throw a baseball.
He told me he and H.J. were out there throwing balls. I don't know if he got very good or not. I haven't seen him do it.
I've called up there a time or two, and Cecil there? No, he and H.J. are out in the parking lot playing catch.
You know, if you don't throw a football or a baseball at a young age, you don't loosen up your shoulder socket enough to really have an efficient motion.
H.J. and Jake got out here where we had room and got me to throw in the ball where I could at least throw it to the catcher.
Thing that I want to have happen is when we have the first game, I want them to be proud of what they created.
I think in June, he made a trip back to campus and saw kind of the finished product, and I think he was super, super pleased and really just proud that this awesome baseball stadium had his name on it, and something that he and his family will always be associated with and can look at and realize that they helped build the most beautiful baseball stadium in college athletics.
If the world had a whole bunch more Cecils, what would the world be like is an interesting question. There'd be an awfully lot of competition. There'd be an awfully lot of people trying to do something better, quicker, cheaper, faster than the neighbor. It wouldn't necessarily be cutthroat, but it would certainly be competitive.
Even though he's one of the most successful people in the state, he has an even bigger heart than his pocketbook is.
You do have the feeling that Cecil has a personal involvement in caring in what happens to me. There's no question about that.
I'm glad I met Cecil because I've learned a lot from him. You know, and he's included me into some of his deals, you know, and it's been a good relationship for all these years.
Cecil does have a sense of humor. He will laugh right along with everybody else.
He treats people the way that he wants to be treated.
I would say Cecil is the epitome of the American dream, a rags to riches, successful, caring entrepreneur who's given back to the community and the society in which he grew up.
Dream big. The bigger the dream, the more significant your impact for yourself and for mankind. So dream big dreams and get out there and make it happen.
In my opinion, the free market is the best place to end poverty because there's so much opportunity out there. Nobody has to be poor.
The free market rewards hard work, rewards consistency, it rewards loyalty. And again, this American dream, as far as I'm concerned, is still very, very alive.
You can be anything you want in life as long as you're willing to pay the price and work.
Cecil's magic is he works harder than anybody and stays longer at work.
For OSU people, Barry Sanders is the greatest of all time. And then you could say the same thing for Garth Brooks as an entertainer. They all came from meager beginnings and went out and did things that were incomprehensible. So Cecil Obrate belongs up there on that Mount Rushmore for Oklahoma State University.
Cecil's extremely proud of Garden City. He's extremely proud of Western Kansas, extremely proud of his state, and very proud to be an American.
I'm proud to be an American because the opportunities in America is what let me do the things I've done. And it's just a matter of wanting something bad enough to get with the program and get it done. You can do whatever you want to do. I say there's more opportunity today than there used to be.
So what do you say? Want to take a ride with me?
You promise it'll be good?
I promise it'll be interesting.
Let's go.
I think about way back when I was young and I didn't have much of nothing. I made a choice right there and then to turn that nothing into something, right? No fancy cars, no fancy clothes, no one knows about me but my friends. But those business folks are gonna know how I became the man I